Chapter 14. These winding roads. Winding roads, take me home. Alright, let's see how it all shook out in the end. We're actually talking to Mum. Great. It finally happened. I kept forgetting about Mum. I know. I'm fine, Mum. Yes, I did see that report. But in fairness, I was also there, so I saw it firsthand. Things are chaotic, but I'm fine. I will let him know, yes. Mum, as I mentioned 5 minutes ago, Quill is back. I'm supposed to be resting, and he has that look on his face. I said I'd tell him. Bye, Mum. We love Mum. With a laugh, I disconnected and gave Quill an amused smile as he just sighed from where he was standing in the door.
She called again.
I told you she's like this.
You did. I'm still processing that, though I'm glad you're able to speak with her normally again.
Me too. It's nice to be out of hiding. At least for me. For the rest of the city, that was still being determined. Change and acceptance didn't come overnight. Quill came all the way inside and flopped onto the sofa with a groan. I motioned him closer and he laid his head in my lap, shutting his eyes. How did it go?
About like these meetings always do. Lots of opinions, all of them conflicting. It doesn't help that several of our normal committee members are incarcerated. And now Endgame has representatives there. And Aurelia's there. And the Triad had to slip someone in as well.
I can't imagine how that's working out for them.
Not well. No one is happy to have them there.
He reached up, letting his fingers rest against my cheek.
How are you feeling?
Better. As I've told you, and Mum, a dozen times, I'm recovering very well. The familiar sadness washed over his face.
I'm glad.
And that was all he said, because we'd had this conversation a dozen times already. That act of desperation in trying to draw Endgame to the city still frustrated us when we remembered it.
What were you and your mother talking about?
Same old. She's been watching the news reports, and you know how it's being handled out there.
I do. Ruben's been calling me non-stop as well. Nice has gone worldwide at this point. Even with Aurelia's protection, people have concerns.
As expected.
But Locke heard from Cerna today.
Cerna?
They're extending their support. Turns out there's a small neo-human population in one of their tertiary domes as well, so they have a vested interest in what happens here.
Well, they always were the more reasonable Triad member. How many does this make now?
5. Of course, Cerna has the most pull. Asteri is so isolated that even when they asserted their support, no one took notice. Sinya revealing they had a similar shadow dome near the waist got more attention, but... well, Cerna is Cerna. It's a much bigger headline now, and it's becoming clearer that Erebos was never what people thought it was. Today, the Endgame representatives expressed dismay about the placement of Espers in all this.
Why is that?
Your story has been spread pretty wide, and it doesn't reflect well on them. And now so many others are speaking up about having to flee their homes to escape forced training. Or worse, forced to accept recruitment. Or else to dodge the threat of other factions. The news is inundated with stories of Esper refugee communities, including in some of the world's biggest cities. It's a bit of a PR nightmare, to use Ulrich's phrasing.
A PR nightmare for Endgame. But, for the rest of us, it was about our lives, our freedom to choose our own paths. The stranglehold Bean and Esper had on our choices. But they would dismiss it as bad PR. It was so frustrating. Have they hinted at what they want to do?
I think for the first time, even they're unsure how to proceed. This is far messier than any of us wanted.
Maybe that works in Nice's favor. Historically speaking, sometimes change is messy.
Perhaps. I'm just tired, and there's no end in sight.
I know. I leaned over, kissing his forehead as I smoothed his hair back. If I was having to spend time recovering, again, from a massive Psi event, Quill had it as bad in many ways. All the political drama had fallen right in his lap. The investigation regarding Sager, the sale of Arensal, the spread of it, who had purchased it, and who they were affiliated with, there was no hiding some of it from the public. New Albion threatened sanctions against Aurelie for allowing an illegal community of neo-humans to flourish. Aurelie retaliated by issuing a formal complaint about the evidence suggesting New Albion was involved in distributing Arensal and the attempted coup. They denied it, but still backed down and retracted their threat of sanctions. Quill was holding it over Endgame's head that Arensal and related experimentation had been going on right under their noses for years, which seemed to hold them at bay. People with stories like Rory's made it difficult for them to deny dropping the ball. Talks were intense all around.
You look like you're thinking depressing thoughts. It's not all bad, you know.
He finally propped himself back up and settled in next to me.
Despite a little bit of scandal involving some of their board members, Stratum's been in the news in a positive way. Their energy research and attempt to harness array radiation as a power source have generated a lot of talk. And that research is only possible because of the neo-human population. It's pulled some positive attention to the city. The public discourse about Espers has been incredibly sympathetic, too. For neo-humans, it's been cautious, but not negative. Despite everything, I imagine we'll find some equilibrium soon.
I hope so. It's never easy to force sudden and dramatic change. People get so used to things being how they are that when you point out the flaws in the legislation and regulations, they struggle to accept it.
I'm just relieved they're giving you time to recover before they start badgering you.
I imagine they're going to be hesitant to badger me for a while. It's weird knowing I'm also a part of this news cycle.
A young student forced to flee her home after being attacked, landing in Nisa, scared and severely injured, only to find a sanctuary in return. Sounds like a book description, really. I'm not surprised people want to report on it.
Maybe you should write that story someday. Complete with her finding an attractive neo-human lover to comfort her on the long, rainy nights away from home.
Has it even rained once here since you arrived?
Just a light shower or two here and there. Comforting me on the non-rainy nights was nice too, though. Doll, so cute. He laughed and pulled me to him.
The good news is that I think Endgame is going to continue to tread carefully, as long as we don't push back too hard on their investigation and audit of our research institute. Magnus Ulrich has been strangely accommodating, though I get the sense the council doesn't share his opinion about Nisa. I feel like he has some ulterior motives, but we'll have to take it one day at a time. He wanted to set up a private meeting with me tomorrow. I told him Locke is the new city manager, but he doesn't care.
New city manager. That's right. Quill had pushed that to Locke when Sager had been removed and arrested. Quite cleverly, because several people wanted Quill to take over instead. Including Magnus, weirdly. Hey, Magnus has got good taste. What can I say?
Either way, I'm interested to hear what he has to say when no one else is monitoring us. But let's not talk about him anymore. I just want to not talk about any of it for a while.
He planted a soft kiss on my lips, and we stayed like that for a long time before he got up to make dinner, not allowing me to help as per usual. I watched him, thinking I was glad to be home. I was glad we'd made it past that curve in the road. There were many more ahead, but we were safe. Nisa was safe. That was what mattered, whatever else came our way. And now we can even go for walks again. I was at the river walk, finding a moment of peace at the end of yet another chaotic day. All days were chaotic lately, though less so now than they had been even a week ago. Or else we were just getting used to the chaos. Ooh, hey, Quill's passionate ending. We did it! It was so strange to be walking here where Vale, Rory, and I desperately tried to reach the outside world for help when it seemed like the city would be lost. Quill still laughed at the fact that the three of us somehow managed to succeed despite, well, the fact that we were us. Thanks, Quill. Esper's, yes, but ultimately just a teacher, an office assistant, and an anthropology student. Or historian when he was trying to make it sound funnier. The damage I'd done that day was still there, but I avoided it when I came here for walks. I didn't want to remember that despair from the moments I thought we'd failed. We had succeeded against the odds, and now the city was still here, and we were all moving forward. I leaned against the railing and stared at the water sparkling in the light of evening. There was a sudden presence behind me, and I might have felt instinctive anxiety if I didn't recognize the subtle sensation. Familiar arms slipped around my waist, and I relaxed into them. Quill didn't quite manage to retain that annoying way of sneaking up on me, not with my newly expanded abilities.
What are you thinking about?
His breath tickled the back of my neck as he spoke. I felt his lips against my skin before his chin came to rest on my shoulder. Do I think about anything else other than Nisa these days?
Probably not. Though I would hope you at least occasionally spare a thought for your poor, overworked partner.
Well, one or two. Sometimes. I turned in his arms, smiling as he planted a soft kiss to my lips this time.
Sorry that took longer than I expected. Ready to go home now?
Sure. I settled against him as we walked side by side, his arm still slung around my waist.
That guy brought up the issue of you being a liaison between Nisa and Endgame again, just so you're aware.
That guy. That guy being Magnus, of course.
Who else? He patched into the meeting without permission, which I assume was just to annoy me.
He does seem to enjoy doing that. Did you tell him I believe Vale would be better at it than me?
Yes. Unfortunately, Vale was also at the meeting and is not keen to have that responsibility punted to them.
As much as they're doing a better job at dodging it than Locke did at dodging the city manager's role, I do think they're more suited to it. But I suppose I understand why my perspective would be helpful. In any case, it's not like it has to be a single person.
That's true. Vale might be more willing to do it if it's both of you. Hell, even Rory could join in.
That could be interesting. I assume Rory's going to be busy, with Endgame pushing for a new academy for young Espers here. Well, it's not like he has experience with that just because he used to teach, but I do think having him help would be good for him. That would be nice. He's like teaching, but it's in a different way. Interesting.
I have thoughts about the academy situation, but it's a decent compromise. Magnus is very aware things have to change. It keeps surprising me, but... well, after talking to him privately a few times, I guess his usual facade is particularly obvious. I don't know what Endgame is like on the inside for the Espers there. But it must not be great if he's fine with weakening Endgame's hold on the Esper population.
Nice.
I get the feeling Nisa's given him an opportunity he's been waiting for. He mentioned privately he'd like to set up academies elsewhere too. Not designed to make soldiers, but to help people learn to live safely with their abilities. Nisa is, to him, the first step.
It's not a bad plan, given the only decent academy right now just happens to be at Endgame's headquarters.
I just don't want you to get too caught up in Endgame's plans. You have other things to do. Especially now that your status is a little more secure.
There's much happening here right now. I'm not sure now is the time to think about my personal plans.
The time to think about it is when you want to think about it. Pure and simple.
I know. For now, I want to be here for you. Not worrying about other things. You have a lot of work to do, and you need my help.
You're always like this.
You know you love it.
I suppose.
Aw, you guys are so sweet with each other. Hours later, after a nice dinner, Quill and I were curled up together in bed. I was reading an early draft of a new book he'd been plucking away at for months in his spare time. He was reading some kind of proposal about something and occasionally making annoyed scoffs before an inevitable flurry of typing that I assumed involved scathing edits. I was the one who finally set down what I was doing, and, after a moment of watching him, set my hand over the device he was reading. Maybe it's time to stop for the night.
Morgan...
You don't have to spend every waking moment working. Not even now.
I know. It's just a lot. There's a lot to do. With Nisa in the public eye now.
I know. I pulled the device out of his hand and set it on the bedside table. But you're not going to get it all done tonight.
I handed a lot of responsibility over to Locke, so I can't just leave him alone on this one. We have more meetings with Endgame tomorrow, then Stratum's new director wanted to meet, and...
He let out an annoyed sigh against my lips, but when I went to pull away, in typical Quill fashion, he pulled me closer, drawing one of my legs over his waist. See, there's more important things you could be doing than working. If you get my drift. Wink, wink. I laughed softly, having already known that would work. Oh, Morgan, you're such a minx. It always did.
Fine, fine. I guess I'll stop for the night.
That convinced you, did it?
You're very persuasive. And, as always, very adept at disrupting everything I do.
It's my way.
I hope you never stop.
I smiled and kissed him again, savoring the taste of him on my lips. Quill didn't resist my attempt to distract him at all. No, if I didn't know better, I'd say he'd been waiting for me to do it. Perhaps encouraging it, knowing him. His hands traveled down my back and over the curve of my hips. And I was going to count that as him having been successfully torn away from work for the night. Well, I didn't mind. That was my goal, after all. I didn't mind the distraction either. I never did. Smiling against Quill's skin, I placed a feather-light kiss just under his jaw, then lower, to a place I'd learned was surprisingly more sensitive than elsewhere. That soft little groan was one I was already familiar with. It was so interesting to learn all his little quirks, like that his sensory system was not perfectly balanced just because it was synthetic. He had sensitive places and less sensitive places, things he thought felt amazing and things he wasn't as keen about. I loved learning every little fact. He sucked air between his teeth as I nibbled his earlobe before running my tongue softly along the outer curve of his ear.
Morgan.
Yes? He said nothing else, to my amusement, but one of his hands found its way to the back of my head as he tipped his to the side, encouraging me to continue. Running my tongue in little circles, I let one of my hands glide down his chest, feeling him lean into the light touch. As my mouth found his collarbone, another groan escaped him. His little reactions were so fascinating and gratifying. I pulled back up to look at him again. That softness on his face sent a shaft of gentle heat straight to my core. I loved him so much. Our lips met again, and he was clasping me to him in a tight embrace. Suddenly he turned, and I found myself on my back looking up at him as his hair fell into his eyes. Life was a marvel, and the labyrinth of twisting, turning paths we found ourselves on was strange, but so wonderful. I was thinking of that when he lowered himself to me, his body lying against the length of mine as our lips collided tenderly in the quiet of his flat. He moved his head to my throat, then the top of my breastbone. His hands were on either side of my torso as he branded fiery kisses to my skin and through the thin top I wore. Every sensation was heightened. The feel of his warm breath through my shirt, the fabric brushing against my skin and raising goosebumps in its wake. He was gently teasing, and I had to resist taking his hands and rubbing them over me. Instead, I closed my eyes, teeth flashing over my lower lip as my fingers found their way to his silky fine hair. His mouth reached lower, causing pleasant warmth to spark through me as he finally pushed my shirt up to bare my skin. And she's out! She's gone. I lifted it over my head in a swift movement, and Quill rocked back on his knees to pull his off as well. Then he was back, exploring with his mouth and tongue, leaving trails of fire on my skin, cooled by the ambient air, then heated again by his breath. It was the first time to be together this way since everything happened, because he wanted me to recover. Aw. And though deep hunger had situated itself in my stomach, Quill was so very gentle. He branded kisses over every inch of my torso, from my collarbone to my navel, the soft touch of his hand roaming my body and raising goosebumps in their wake. I arched my back and let out a shuddering groan, wanting more. He sat up without warning, pulling one of my legs over his shoulder to place a heated kiss to the inside of my thigh, eyes never leaving mine. My breathing hitched as his tongue trailed a little circle on my skin. With the soft glow of city lights behind him, he looked incredible. Amazed, I reached for him, and he leaned forward enough to capture my hand to his cheek before he kissed the center of my palm. Quill lowered himself to me again, placing another feverish kiss to my lips. I let out a soft gasp as his hips pressed hard against me. Finally, the slow and gentle touch receded a little. His breathing was coming in shaking gasps when my hands found their way to his back. There was still so much chaos, despite that it was less than it had been in the days that followed the attempted coup. But these moments were something that had been worth protecting, worth every ounce of pain they had been bought with. Quill was worth it. I was so very glad to be with him. For every moment, every touch, every gentle reminder, every time our lips met, every time we touched, I was glad. I felt very satisfied when we were lying together, half asleep later on. My head was on his chest, listening to the strange and beautiful sound of his heart as I traced my fingers over his chest, marveling at the pores and even the freckles. Damn, girl, you are so far gone. Look at his pores! Hey. I love you. A soft smile spread on his face.
I'd hope so.
That is such a you response that I'm almost annoyed at how charming I find it. Right?
I'm glad to see you still get annoyed at petty things.
Just because I'm annoyed at you, it doesn't mean you have to call yourself petty.
Ah, and now the ridiculous humor comes out.
You know you adore it. And me.
I'd hope so.
Aw, stop. Look at them. So soft, so cute. I love this. I smiled against him and shut my eyes. Tomorrow would bring with it more chaos, I knew that. But for now, at least, we could just rest. I could enjoy these quiet moments together and relish in whatever peace they offered. And I was grateful for that. They really were similar, weren't they? If I was at home, I could pull out the full report and give a more detailed analysis, Vireo, but I do agree they're similar. I would need to see it in person to know for sure. Wait, is Vireo in this? Vireo! My man! It's pretty difficult to do a psychometric reading on images versus in person.
Can you get out here anytime soon?
How soon are we talking?
Given the increased storm activity this year, we're thinking we may only have another 2 or 3 weeks here before we have to close the site for a few months.
I think I can get out there in a week or so, but probably only for a couple of days.
If all you need is to see the thing in person, a couple of days should be fine.
Do you want to have Eden call so we can set up a place to meet? Hey, I'm gonna get back with these guys! Let's go! I love that!
Will do. Looking forward to working with you again, Morgan.
Same.
See you then.
Bye!
Hey, Morgan. Didn't know you'd be here today.
Just stopped by to pick up Quill, then had a surprise call.
Busy as usual, I see.
A little. Vale gave me a knowing look, but I just shrugged. It had been like that since about 2 months ago. I had joined the research institute as planned, and things had been normal for a while. but we had learned about an unintended side effect of being a queen-ranked Esper touching ancient artifacts. Turns out psychometry wasn't an entirely non-useful skill, and though psychometric visions weren't a foolproof method for deciphering ancient and indecipherable texts, I had still been at the epicenter of some potential breakthroughs in that regard. Man, we're having like combos of roots happening here. We got Lance's archaeological buddies, we got Caleb's artifact plot coming in here hot and stuff. We love to see it. The last few months had been a rush to compare texts and find patterns we hadn't been able to identify before. It wasn't quite like an instant translation, but we were making headway, and sometimes my skills were in demand to help with comparisons between Syndicate dig sites and artifacts. Not that I was complaining about getting drawn into all sorts of fascinating research. Not in the slightest. Life was good. Busy, but good.
Well, I'm glad you stopped by. Saves me a call later. I had something with the Esper intake committee to run by you.
What's that? Vale handed me a small display tablet with what looked like a profile on it. What? I just saw Brennan, I'm like, big eyes. He contacted? What is happening at the end here? I was like, aw man, you know, things are so chaotic. It's kind of sad in a way. And then it's just like, hey, let's just throw in things from all these roots. What do you think? That'd be pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty cool. I love it.
His name is Brennan Raw, and he contacted me yesterday evening. He wants to meet with us. I think he has a small group of people he wants to bring here.
This profile is pretty sparse.
He mentioned a lab in Delphine. One he escaped from.
Ah, another one.
Well, I don't know. We need to get more details from him. He said something weird when we first talked, though. He said he'd been planning to come here on his own anyway, but with recent developments, decided to try things our way instead. Whatever that means.
Yeah. About that. So I guess he did that when Morgan didn't come here, but because Morgan was here, things played out a little bit differently. Oh, Brennan. Huh. Is there a time frame on this meeting yet?
3 days.
That's fast.
He was insistent. I was hoping you'd be there. He seems amicable, and I'm not getting any bad feelings, but you know.
Looks like things are going to be even busier than usual for a while.
It always is.
Sorry, we ran late again.
You say that every time. I was just thinking that too. Like, every time you're like, I'm sorry, we ran late again. Are you running late if you're always running late? He leaned in for a quick kiss as he put his arm around me.
That's because everything takes too damn long.
I'll let you two go. Morgan, I'll send the info for the meeting.
Sounds good. I'll be there.
Wanna get dinner at our cafe?
Of course. Things had changed for Nisa, for me. It was unexpected, chaotic, but for the best, I thought. I found equilibrium. We were all finding it. The future was wide open, full of possibilities and new things, and continued change. And as Quill and I left the office heading to dinner, I realized I was grateful. Grateful to be here, and grateful to see what was ahead, especially knowing that whatever it was, we would see it through together. And that was more than enough. Dang, what an ending. Man. During the whole, like, snuggling scene, I was like, aw, this is so sweet. You know, I feel bad for them because, like, their world is in the most chaos out of all the routes that we've done, I think, up to this point. And then they just hit me with the, but she's in the research institute, and she's going on her dig site some of the time. And also, she's deciphering the artifacts. And also, Brennan wants to work together. I'm just like, my brain exploded with delight. Just, man, I can't believe there's like an ending where Brennan is like, not being an entire dick. He's not actually like trying to hurt anybody for a change. He's like, you know what? Let's try things your way. I was gonna go there anyway, but I've been watching, and instead of taking over people and making them see eyeballs, I'm gonna bring my people over there and we're gonna like work out a thing. Brennan believed in Morgan. Amazing. And Quill and Morgan are just so adorable together. Great chemistry, just right from the get-go. Play off each other so naturally, fit together perfectly, just so satisfying. The only thing is I wish I could have punched Vic in the face. That would have been like the cherry on top of like this beautiful Sunday that this route was. But otherwise, I don't know if I have like anything negative to say about it. It was great. Super satisfying. Super duper satisfying. Might be my new favorite? Might be. Oh, it's so hard to pick. Oh, these routes are so good. How do they just keep getting so good? Ash, why you make me choose between all these guys? They're so good. Yay! Look at our boy. He's beautiful. We only got 2 left. It pleases me that this is like symmetrical now. Just gotta say. Alright, guys, thank you very much for joining me for Quill's route. I hope you enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. So satisfying. I am most pleased. And now, we got a sweet ending to go do, so hopefully I will see you for that. Until next time, guys, I will see you later.